Hi, and welcome to the Atria Lunch and Learn webinar. Today we're going over the Atria Update Client. So this is a client that's based in new private AD management, and it's a pretty clever tool that helps you manage all of your deployments and your customers better. So let's dive into what that is. So what's the Atria Update Client? This is a client that runs PowerShell scripts in your customer environments. So this is basically a service that kind of sits and sleeps waiting for commands to be sent to it, kind of like our provisioning service, but it enables you to kind of run custom PowerShell with controlled and secure access to be able to initiate those commands. So the primary purpose of this was to pull down and deploy the Atria components and registers your environment to kind of Atria and helps in the process of managing your environments. So, of course, the primary use for this client is to update your private Active Directory servers. So the problem that we kind of face with this is there's a lot of things on your on-premise or private Active Directory customers that they have that for. So there's many issues that can't be solved without logging into the servers, such as you're waiting for your users to sync with Azure AD Connect. If you want to go kick off the sync, you need to log in and do it. Or your private AD clients have line of business applications that don't have an external API, which means they need to have scripts run on the server or even legacy bash scripts. Then if your customers have things such as hybrid exchange, there's not a lot of management tools for them, and you still need to make changes on the private directory. And of course, updating all of my Atria environments takes too long because there's too many of them. So how does the client work? So our client sits, so we have a centralized management for this. So you send commands from the provisioning server to RabbitMQ. So it's the same as the usual provisioning process, but you're basically initiating it from the provisioning server. The remote provisioning service picks up the message. Then it runs the installation command of the client if it's not installed already. Then the commands that were sent from the central provisioning server are validated against a whitelist on the private AD side to make sure that they're even allowed in the list of config for that. So each of the environments has their own configuration of whitelisted commands because all of your customers are different and won't need the same commands validated. Then the commands are run and they either return success or failure. So how do you run a command via Atria Update? So everybody knows how to connect to an Atria feed. It's a very simple command that we have to do to kind of get down our code and packages. So here's kind of how it would look broken down. You're basically breaking down the command into what the command is and the parameters in a JSON format. And then we're able to send that directly via RabbitMQ to the server that can work out the command if it's allowed and easily kind of filter through the arguments and the different parameters. So all you're doing is invoking an update command, which we have as part of Atria tools, and then specifying the parameters needed. So why would you use the update client? Well, we can leverage it with Atria. This means you can run PowerShell against remote directories. That's the key thing. It's basically the world's your oyster when you can run the PowerShell on there. Anything that's kind of got an integration or webhooks or whatever's needed, you can control that and extend that as much as you possibly want to. But a key reason we have seen this is enabling hybrid exchange. So that's, for example, there needs to be, off the top of my head, it's new remote mailbox. You have to run that after you create the user. This is a real problem where you're logging into many servers when you can leverage Atria to kind of do it on user provisioning on that private Active Directory for the customers that need it. And then from an example of a machine, there's things such as initiating an AD Connect synchronization. So that's purely to get your users into Office 365 faster to be able to continue provisioning services to them, as currently you have to wait whatever time's been set up for that, and this helps you speed up your provisioning process. Or there's things such as adding local user accounts on computers, or once again, whatever you need from the remote directories, you can basically run the PowerShell to enable that. And then from an app perspective, we kind of have integrate with legacy line of business applications. So if you've got something that is kind of out of date or old, you can kind of use Atria to run on that environment and configure that for you without needing to log in, as well as running remote code. So yeah, the key thing is any scripts you have on those private Active Directories, you can run them through our Atria Update Client without needing to kind of run it from your RMM or log into them. You can even run stuff on your RMM through Atria Update if that's the way you wanted to go. But we basically give you the power to run and manage customers' private directories via their scripts and stuff that's stored on their environment in a secure, easy to use manner. So how would I extend this in Atria? So by using our SDK, there are multiple ways to interact with the Atria Update Client. So you can basically open up a PowerShell window on the provisioning server, get the environment ID of what you're trying to manage, and start running scripts against it. So that's a very easy way for a kind of system administrator to push out updates to all of their environments when they're doing an update, or if they just want to, if they've created a script that does reporting of users on those private environments, you can run it and get the data back. There's kind of endless possibilities of what you need to do on many servers, and you can kind of run that from here. You could create a custom service within Atria. That's, as usual, you can kind of create your custom service and have provisioning logic to be able to run the Atria Update Client. So that's just initiating PowerShell and running the same commands. Or you can change the provisioning rules as needed to suit. So for example, when you're provisioning all of your private AD customers, you need to put them in a specific, I'm not 100% sure what you could need to do, but if a good example here is every time you provision a user who's on private AD with AD Connect, they need to have the sync ran after their user's created. You can kind of change that to suit, and you would be able to then manage your users quicker and easier. So yeah, that's all I've got for you today. So if you've got any questions about the Atria Update Client or something completely unrelated, I'm here to kind of take your questions, but I hope that was a quick overview of a tool that we have in our tool set to help you manage your customers and users.